So good morning or afternoon, evening, wherever you guys are calling in from. Thank you for all. Thank you all for coming to this event where we're going to be exploring the question, what if we took a more open approach to conservation? My name is Patrick Campbell. I'm a biologist by training, with most of my professional career being spent in environmental science and conservation. I'm currently employed as a GIS analyst doing providing tech support to the EPA, which is a government agency in the United States that does kind of regulation of pollution and hazardous waste and that sort of thing. And today I'm here in the capacity of a fellow with JOGL, Just One Giant Lab, helping to build a community around conservation and the climate crisis kind of in particular. So the story that I'm going to be sharing today begins here. In 2011, I was freshly graduated from Northern Illinois University's master's program in what else but analytical philosophy. This is one of the many twists and turns that my path would take. I don't have a whole lot of time to go into the reasons why. But as I mentioned, my background was in biology and environmental science. So that summer, I set off for Peru for a volunteer opportunity at the Amazon Conservation Association's newest research station. It's called Villa Carmen. Villa Carmen is located about a 5-hour bus ride, pending there are no roadblocks, avalanches, that sort of thing to block that road. Coming from Cusco, it passes through some kind of transitional montane forest. And then Villa Carmen itself is located in lowland rainforest, kind of between the Pini and Pilcopata rivers right here. It's adjacent to the Manu National Biosphere Reserve, as well as several indigenous communities, including the Machikenga, Wachiperi, and Quechua ethnic groups. My job was to set up the station's biological monitoring program. For those who aren't familiar, this often involves setting up an array of camera traps, trying to capture images of mammals and other megafauna, walking transects, documenting different species that you encounter. I also managed a serpentarium and provided kind of interpretive walks, guided tours to local visitors from the adjacent town. So I was living the young conservationist dream. I was in the Amazonian rainforest, getting my hands dirty and helping to protect some of the most biodiverse habitats on the entire planet. I eventually took over the volunteer program and started creating opportunities at 2 additional research stations. Pictured here, Waikecha is the Amazon Conservation Association's field research station located in the cloud forests. And then further into the lowland rainforest, Los Amigos Biological Station. This was actually their first research station. It was very famous and kind of active in its day. It's a little bit less so now, but still visit all these sites, and there's some really cool research happening there. And it was at this point, as I started to get deeper into my work, that I started to notice some flaws in our approach. We were practicing a methodology that was pretty standard among organizations like ours. We were monitoring the same animal groups using very similar protocols, collecting similar sorts of data, etc. But despite all of this, there was very little effort in combining our efforts. We weren't really achieving kind of the greater scale of application of the work that we were doing because of these lack of connections with other organizations. A lot of the data that we were collecting, because it was being collected by inexperienced volunteers, was being either lost or mismanaged. And in many cases, the sort of work we were doing was being leveraged more as a means of generating revenue to support other activities than it was to kind of inform policy or practice. And this is not speaking about any particular organization, but kind of in general, this was a common practice. So what I was starting to recognize was what's referred to in the literature as a problem of scale, or a problem of scale mismatch. So the problem of scale mismatch occurs when actions are undertaken at a scale that doesn't reflect the scales required to solve the problem. The particular version of the problem that I was experiencing had to do, again, with the lack of connections between organizations that, for all intents and purposes, were engaged in the same larger effort. We were operating largely as kind of independent entities. There's a lot of siloing. So we weren't really experiencing kind of the network effects that were really necessary to address these problems. There are many other problems of scale mismatches that you guys might be familiar with. There are spatial mismatches where, for instance, park boundaries fail to overlap with maybe the range of the species that's trying to protect. There are temporal mismatches, as when species surveys fail to overlap with the seasonal migration patterns of species, et cetera. The list goes on. By 2014, I'd spent 3 years in Peru, and the more time that went by, the more my attention and focus began to shift to the climate crisis. This was a popular movie during that time, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. Climate change was becoming the problem that swallowed up all the other problems, and it kind of blew that scaling problem wide open. And this became a major issue for me in how I understood my role as a conservation professional. It really changed my perception of what I might be able to accomplish through my career. And this ultimately led me away from conservation for a while. And of course, today the scaling problem dominates the headlines. And whatever aspect you might choose to focus on, species extinction, habitat loss, climate pollution and waste, it's clear that the conservation agenda, broadly speaking, is failing. As one paper puts it, progress in other fields of global development might not be happening as fast as we'd like, but in many cases, the needle is at least moving in the right direction. On global poverty, for example, living standards are rising faster than ever before, and illiteracy, child labor, and extreme poverty are at record lows. But not so in conservation. Despite valiant, costly efforts, indicators are pointing in the wrong way. So one thing I guess that's important to stress here is that these are not problems that any single organization is responsible for. The organization that I was working for instance, does really important work and makes a real difference. But the issues that I'm describing are systemic and in some respects intractable. They're what many people would call a wicked problem. A recent article in the New York Times expresses the scale problem in this way. Climate change has a way of making everyone feel at once very small and bothersomely large, big enough to worsen the problem, but too tiny to stop it. So the great irony of our situation is that, in fact, we are really good at achieving scale. We do have the capacity to scale. But because of modern globalization, whenever one of us performs an action locally, makes a purchase, hops on a plane or casts a vote, the consequences of our actions reverberates on a global scale. And because the design of the systems that organize these opportunities and these activities, we have essentially tipped the scale that governs our collective impact in the wrong direction. So instead of achieving kind of the collective good that we're capable of achieving, we're actually producing this kind of collective harm. And of course, the future of the Earth is kind of hanging in the balance. So fast forward to 2020, I'm graduating again, this time with a master's in public policy and management from Carnegie Mellon University. CMU is well known for its data science training, which I was looking to leverage to become more effective against issues like climate change. It also has one of the few open science programs in an American research university, and I actually worked with that organization for a time prior to coming on board with JOGL. So as I was wrestling with the issues that I was describing earlier, there was also this larger movement underway, which also carried kind of the spirit of my concern. The peer-to-peer movement, the open science movements, and kind of a wider collection of movements that are kind of adjacent and moving together were also going on during this time. And JOGL, of course, was kind of one product of that movement. So this current project represents kind of the convergence of my path with that broader stream. This is kind of how I came to intersect that broader movement and kind of how I'm trying to leverage it now to address some of the concerns that I had as a conservation professional. So what is the Conservation Giant Lab? First, it's a vehicle for addressing the scaling problem that I've been describing. This community was founded on the belief that regular people equipped with modern open science tools and methodologies can mobilize a collective response to the climate crisis that's truly effective and devise solutions that rival those of any other sector of society. It's an egoless space where anyone and everyone can contribute to conservation and climate goals. And it's a hub for collaboration and sharing of knowledge and resources. So instead of kind of the traditional siloed approach, we're providing this kind of single stream repository for collective knowledge and resources, all the resources being collected together to support kind of the work of the entire community. And if you've been involved with JOGL for any amount of time, you've probably seen this slide before. This is one of my favorite slides that they share. It just kind of really captures the kind of vision that we have here, which is that currently the contributors to published science is just a tiny fraction of the world's population. And in fact, even a tiny fraction of those who are even involved in higher education and on paper have the capacity to participate. So this makes it very clear to me that when we talk about an all hands on deck approach to the climate crisis, this is not a last ditch effort. It's not throwing the kitchen sink at it. There's really good evidence to suggest that civil society can be mobilized to achieve this kind of global scale impact that's needed. And as I said before, we're doing it already. Unfortunately, just not in the ways that we need to. So today is really about kind of exploring what we can do together, what kind of opportunities exist currently, and as well as the ideas that you bring to the table for being here. Some current activities that we're engaged are listed here. One of them is just growing and developing the giant lab itself. I'm working have been working independently, but I'm interested in kind of finding some help with doing some kind of general network building. We're doing some preparations and kind of discovery of grant opportunities to find, again, some funding for supporting these kinds of projects. We are involved in community engagement and outreach, particularly kind of through social media and building the community on JOGL itself, event planning and that sort of thing. Secondly, we are starting a program. This is kind of one of JOGL's primary ways of structuring the work of the community. It's kind of a time-bound, singular focus. In this case, we're looking at creating a global network of land restoration projects. These are it's a global decentralized network of nature-based carbon dioxide removal projects that in principle can reach the gigaton per year scale in 30 years. We also have some events coming up. Some of these are already, I think, on the JOGL calendar, and we'll be continuing to promote these over the days to come. One of them is coming up in April during Citizen Science Month. We're going to be collaborating with SciStarter. This is another kind of citizen science organization that operates out of Arizona State University to host some events related to the work we're doing here. Also, JOGL is hosting Just One Giant Summit, I think later this summer, and we're going to be doing some activities to support that as well. And finally, we're looking just for projects themselves. If you have a current project that you think might fit or benefit from this model, we welcome you to come on to our community, to join up with our resources, discover potential collaborators, and again, connect with some of the resources that will be kind of accumulating over the months and years to come. As a first step, of course, all you need to do is maybe reach out to me. There are plenty of ways to get in touch. One of them is just to email me at patrick@jogl.io. You can also reach out to me on the JOGL platform itself or through Slack. We have several ways to reach me, or anyone also could help kind of get you to the right place if you wanted to reach out to Paige or Thomas. So again, lots of opportunities, and we are really looking forward to having you guys give your own ideas about what you can, how you can contribute. And I think to that end, we're going to now break into some breakout rooms where we have the opportunity to discuss that in a little bit more depth, and then we'll reconvene and share some notes.
So this is the part of the meeting where we all reconvene and kind of share what all the rooms were talking about. These are very short events, and it is hard to kind of cover everything, but sometimes interesting things do come out. So we ask anyone who has anything to share that they really did want to share to just come forward and yeah, share to say it at their time.
So I liked how Jim said about Thomas's presentation that I'm here the first time, so I understand that JOGL is like a matchmaking platform which help people help each other. Is that correctly said? Jim, you said it better.
Yeah, I simply said that it was kind of a database community where people, projects, and resources are matchmade. You know, and then of course it also helps projects to form, make progress, solve problems, and accomplish their goals.
Nice. And Leila, I heard you speak a lot in Breakout Room 2. It seems like you were saying quite interesting things. Potentially you want to recap a few to the main group?
Given that I've got my ambient noise, it's putting me on the spot because it sounds so strange. Okay, I guess probably just bridging to that, I was talking a little bit about wildlife conservation and digital technology and some of the experiences that I've had in some of the research, which is number one, comment about community of communities, wildlabs.net. If you haven't come across them, their focus is really about building out a technology or a community to help foster technology engagements within wildlife conservation, working also with kind of commercial technology providers as well. So I definitely think that there's an avenue there. And then just the second thing that I would say, which is the tools to be able to link people up from kind of requirements that they have is super important to the people that you obviously have, and making sure that that's an effective link. And I've got a couple of NGOs that I'm working with that would definitely be interested. So I'll be interested to see how your platform works to enable that.
Oh, Patrick, you're muted.
Yeah, that all sounds great. And I just wanted to echo again a comment I made in my breakout room, which is, you know, regardless of where you are, if this is something that you're looking at actually joining our community, that's amazing. If you're not, but you have some ideas, it would be really helpful to us in kind of getting this off the ground, to have those resources shared. Just reach out to me, even if it's just sharing some links that I can follow up on, and it'll put you kind of on my radar and allow me to kind of reach out if I have any follow-up questions. But all of this would be, we're pulling it from the chat, but again, reaching out afterwards is a even better way of continuing that conversation.
So I have a question, can I? So how does, let's say, the NGO I work with, how can they become members of JOGL?
It's very simple. You just contact us, and we take the time with you to explain you how you can create a space. So we make sure that you can adapt like your goals, your mission to, or the contrary, that you understand how to adapt the framework, the JOGL framework to your missions and goals. Yeah, it's basically the main step, and then it's about understanding how we can also expose you to the rest of the JOGL community, so that you can attract, potential new members, or you can also engage people on specific actions that you're organizing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I sent a message on the chat. If you look at it, there's a link to register on the JOGL platform as individuals and ask to be a member of the Conservation Giant Lab. There's also a link to join our JOGL community Slack, because there we have a Giant Conservation Lab channel as well, where updates will be posted about the project. And finally, again, Patrick's email. So if you want to reach out directly to him, you can use that. And yeah, that's basically it.
Wonderful. Thanks, Eloisa. Any other wonderful insights about what if conservation was more open? Did you get to dig in deep into that at all, or was it JOGL demos?
We had a few, I mean, sorry, just some projects. We had people sharing their own projects that had some clear overlap, and it'd be good to kind of explore those further.
Yeah, our breakout room was really diverse. I loved hearing what people were saying. So yeah.
Shrestha, maybe there's a little recap of everyone or anything.
Yeah, I think we were mostly talking about what kind of support would organizations and communities involved in conservation and involved in working around protected areas would need, like what really would support them. And we were also trying to see why partnerships, although they seem very natural and like they should be happening, why they still are very difficult to establish. And a lot of things that Leila was talking about, I think she recapped it really, really well. So yeah, and Fabiani was also talking about how she has been working with people who are coming from protected areas, and how changing policies in Brazil is kind of affecting those places adversely. So yeah, it was a lot of things. So yeah.
Out of curiosity, is anyone in this room interested in kind of joining this Giant Conservation Lab, or taking this, learning more about the community approach to kind of conservation in general, or other thematic fields really?
Yeah, I already joined, and I hadn't realized what a great resource it really is, and how I can really accelerate progress on certain kinds of projects. So my challenge is to figure out ways that JOGL could help me do some of the things I want to do. And that could be an interesting discussion in and of itself.
Absolutely, yeah, well, we're always here. And
let's set up a time, Jim, where we can discuss this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll email. Yeah, hey, I did have one idea, is make stuff a lot more fun. Hey, I don't want to be rude or anything, but quite often science is boring. I mean, you know what I mean? So I've been experimenting with gamifying a lot of the stuff we do. Like, for example, for one of the things I'm doing, it may sound odd with the Ukraine project, is setting up things people accomplish as quests, and setting up guilds and having people level up and having rewards. Basically, World of Ukraine Warcraft kind of thing. And so, we're going to have badges, really cool badges for stuff. And by the way, an example of kind of humorous badges that relate to science, I would recommend you go look at where is it now? I have it here somewhere. I think it's, yeah, here it is, badgesforscience.org. It's incredibly humorous, and it has a lot of badges. I mean, you can print them out, you could have them printed on fabric, and maybe you end up with like conservation scouts, having a lot of fun, accomplishing things, getting, and so on and so forth. So make science more fun.
Yeah, that's I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Zooniverse, but that's kind of the premise behind a lot of their work. Yeah. The kind of gamification of some of those more rote data entry tasks that, they're not fun. Not fun if you have to do a million of them, but if you're just, playing a quick game every evening or something, classifying galaxies, it actually really is fun. There's a really cool one called Fold It, where you're solving protein folding problems, and that one's fun as well.
Yeah, it'd be cool if there were like a game development interest group. Yeah. Actually, I'd have kind of an interest in seeing that happen, actually. Yeah.
We've been looking at badges to augment the experience in JOGL. That's in the pipeline.
Yeah, I got to say though, you got to be prepared. A lot of game devs are wild and crazy people. So hey, I have a feeling they'd fit right in, right? You know, anyway. Yeah.
But that's a good point. I mean, we are organizing this kind of summit around community-driven science and innovation, and gamification might actually be a really interesting track to talk about, because that is one way to gather lots of people from different backgrounds around like specific missions. That really kind of
Yeah. And pull in a lot of people who actually are doing science content and a lot of video games they do. Like I can think of a bunch of video games off the top of my head that have tons of science content, but I'm sure these people know absolutely nothing about JOGL. And so it's a match made in heaven, you know, to have a track like that. In fact, I'd be happy to help organize it actually. After we win the Ukraine war. Okay. I'm a little busy.
Absolutely. Priorities. All right, well, we are at the kind of end of the event, and I'm receiving a lot of Slack messages that I should have muted. Sorry about that. But I can keep the room open if you guys want to keep discussing. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here. You have all those links in the chat if you want to get in touch. We'd love to work with you.
Yeah, it's great hearing everyone's feedback as well. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and see you soon.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.